Let's get one thing straight. Detachment is not a weapon. It's not about cold shoulders, mind games, or dramatic exits. That's not strength, that's just ego in disguise. Real detachment is calm, it's quiet. It's not slamming the door, it's simply walking away from the noise, not to hurt them, not to make them chase you, but to finally choose you. Because here's what no one tells you: sometimes the most loving you can do for yourself is let go of the people who don't know how to love you back. And that's not bitterness, that's survival. When you start to detach, you're not turning your heart off, you're just refusing to let it be used as someone else's emotional playground. You're no longer holding space for someone who refuses to show up with respect, with consistency, with honesty. And yes, it will hurt. Because you cared, because you tried, because you saw the good in them, maybe more than they ever showed you. But let's stop pretending effort means we have to stay. Protecting your peace will confuse people who were never invested in it. They'll call you selfish, cold, dramatic. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. You're not here to manage their feelings. You're here to manage your healing. This kind of detachment is quiet, internal work. It's you pulling your energy out of conversations that drain you. It's not replying to that text right away, or at all. It's realizing that someone can still be a good person and still be completely wrong for you. It's realizing you've outgrown relationships where your value had to be proven instead of simply recognized. It's choosing not to chase, not to fix, not to beg. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally care enough about yourself not to keep bleeding for people who only know how to take. So no, detachment isn't punishment. It's protection, and it's powerful. Absolutely, let's dive deep into Keynote 2. Silence is power, not weakness. We're staying locked in that fierce, emotionally grounded tone. This one's about reclaiming your voice by choosing not to use it, and why that silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. We live in a world that glorifies the last word, the perfectly worded clapback, the fiery exit speech, the let me just explain one more time so they finally get it. But let me tell you something most people won't. Real power doesn't shout. It doesn't beg. It doesn't explain itself over and over again. Real power goes silent. Because silence, true, intentional silence, is unnerving. Not because it's empty, but because it's full of restraint, full of clarity, full of everything you've already said, shown, and tolerated that they chose to ignore. See, when you finally stop talking, it forces them to listen to the echo of their own behavior. No distractions, no justifications, just their own reflection looking back at them. And that's silence. That's where the shift happens. Not for them, for you. Because when you stop arguing, stop proving, stop justifying your worth, you reclaim every ounce of energy you were wasting on someone who didn't deserve the access in the first place. Silence is not weakness. Weakness is staying in a cycle where you're constantly trying to explain why you deserve better. Silence says, I've said enough. I've shown enough. I've had enough. Silence breaks cycles. It starves manipulation. It ends conversations that were never going anywhere. And it lets you listen not to them, but to you. You begin to hear your own voice again, the one that got drowned out by all the overthinking, the people-pleasing, the hoping. You realize that you don't owe anyone a front row seat to your pain just because they played a part in causing it. So stop wasting your breath on people who only hear what suits them. Let them sit in the silence. Let them wonder. Let them miss the access they once had and never respected. Because when you choose silence, you don't lose your voice, you take it back. All right, let's keep the fire going. Now we step into Keynote 3, feel it, then freeze it, and this one, it hits deep. This is where emotional detachment gets real. We're not skipping the pain, we're walking through it, owning it, and then shutting the door behind us. Let's be honest, people love to preach move on, get over it, don't let it bother you. But here's the truth, they skip. You can't detach from what you haven't first allowed yourself to feel. So no, this step isn't about pretending. It's not about faking smiles or throwing on affirmations like emotional duct tape. It's about getting real with yourself, sitting in the mess for a minute, letting the pain breathe so it can bleed out, not build up. You feel it so it doesn't own you. Feel the disappointment. Feel the betrayal. Feel the ache of expectations crashing down. Let it hit, but don't let it stay. See, emotions aren't the enemy. Suppressing them is. What you don't feel fully, you'll carry silently, and silently held pain becomes loud in all the wrong places. Overreactions, anxiety, jealousy, impulsiveness. That's the cost of skipping the feel it step. But once you've felt it, really sat with it, cried through it, screamed into pillows, if you have to, then you freeze it. You lock it up in the past where it belongs. You stop reopening wounds just to see if they still hurt. You stop replaying every conversation looking for clues, for closure, for signs you missed. Why? Because that story already ended, and you don't owe anyone, not even yourself, a rerun of pain that taught you what it needed to teach. You freeze it, not to forget, but to move without dragging it behind you like dead weight. You carry the lesson, not the wound, so no, detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you cared enough to let it run through you, and now you care enough about yourself to release it. You're not heartless, you're healing, and that's the kind of quiet strength no one can take from you. Rebuild the inner you, piece by piece. You've detached, you've gone quiet. You felt the storm and stood in the wreckage, and now you're sitting there, maybe wondering what now? Now you rebuild, not all at once, not perfectly, but intentionally. Because here's the thing no one teaches you: emotional detachment isn't just about cutting people off. It's about coming back to yourself piece by piece, brick by brick. See, when you've been wrapped up in someone emotionally, especially someone who drained you, your identity can start to fade. Your voice gets quieter, your needs get smaller, you become an echo of the version you used to be. Now is the time to reclaim that version, or better yet, redesign it. Start small. Start with the basics. What do you like? What lights you up that has nothing to do with them? What used to make you feel grounded before you bent yourself into pieces to keep someone else happy? Go rediscover that version of you. Start pouring energy into things that feed you instead of empty you. Wake up early, move your body, make plans without second guessing if they'll approve. Get lost in your passions again. Read something that challenges your thinking. Say no without explaining yourself. Say yes to things you were once too scared to try. This part of the process isn't loud. It's quiet, it's personal, it's sacred. You're not showing off, you're showing up for you. And look, it won't feel like progress every day. Some days, healing feels like doing dishes or finally sending that email or getting out of bed when it's the last thing you want to do. But don't underestimate those small wins, they're everything. Because every time you choose yourself, even in a tiny way, you stitch yourself back together. Every time you don't text them, every time you stop checking their page, every time you invest in your peace, instead of their chaos, you reclaim another piece of you. This is not a bounce back. This is a build up, and you don't need to rush it. Just commit to it, piece by piece. Let me know if you're ready for Keynote 5 next. Cut the rope, not the memory. We're almost through the whole transformation arc. All right, time to go even deeper with Keynote 5. Cut the rope, not the memory. This one's heavy, but it's also freeing, because sometimes the hardest part of letting go isn't the person, it's what they meant to you. This is where you learn that detaching doesn't have to mean denial. Let's get into it. Cut the rope, not the memory. Let's clear something up right now. Letting go doesn't mean pretending it never mattered. Too many people try to move on by erasing everything. Photos deleted, names blocked, conversations buried. It feels clean, but it rarely is, because memories don't disappear on command. And healing isn't about pretending you were never hurt. It's about acknowledging it happened and deciding not to carry the pain any further. So no, you don't have to burn every bridge. You don't have to hate them to heal. You don't have to erase the good moments just because the ending was bad. You just have to cut the rope. The rope that keeps you tied to what no longer feeds your growth. The rope that keeps you emotionally available to someone who is no longer showing up for you. The rope that quietly says, maybe if I wait, they'll change. Cut it. Because as long as that emotional tether exists, even if it's just a little string of what if, you'll stay stuck in a loop, waiting, replaying, hoping, questioning, and that loop will rob you of your present. But here's what you're not cutting: the lessons, the growth, the reality of what you felt. That stuff stays not as baggage, but as blueprint. It teaches you what your boundaries are now, what your worth looks like, what you will and will not accept moving forward. You can honor what the connection was without letting it define who you are. You can remember them and not run back. You can miss them and still not want them anymore. Cutting the rope is an act of courage. It says, I release you, not because you didn't mean something, but because I finally mean something to myself. You don't need to forget the story. You just need to stop rereading the chapter. One last step to go. Want to finish with Keynote 6. Watch the patterns, not the words. That's where the real clarity kicks in. Let's bring this home. Final chapter. Keynote 6. Watch the patterns, not the words. This is the moment where your emotional detachment stops being reactive and starts being wise. This is where the blindfold comes off. Watch the patterns, not the words. Let's talk about the comeback. The I miss you text, the I've changed phone call, the sudden burst of attention, compliments, and emotional confessions that just happen to arrive the moment you go silent. Familiar, right? Here's the truth that hits hard. Words are easy. Patterns are truth. Anyone can say what you want to hear. Anyone can speak in regret and nostalgia when they feel your absence. But if their actions don't match the apology, it's just another performance. So if you want to detach emotionally, not just for now, but for good, you've got to stop falling for sentences and start studying behavior. Ask yourself, have they really changed, or are they just uncomfortable with losing access to you? Is their apology consistent or just convenient? Are they showing up differently, or just saying the same thing in a softer tone? Don't listen with your heart. Not this time. Listen with your eyes. Because people don't accidentally show you who they are, they do it over and over again. And if you keep giving them credit for potential instead of holding them accountable for patterns, you'll stay stuck in the same cycle. Detachment means stepping back far enough to see clearly. It means not getting high off their promises and low off their excuses. You're not a fool for hoping, but you are responsible for what you allow once you've seen the truth. And the truth is in the pattern. So when they come back, and you don't need to be cruel. You don't need to rage or explain or relive it all. You just need to observe, quietly. Do their patterns align with their promises? Are they respecting your boundaries without needing reminders? Are they offering consistent action, not temporary pressure? If the answer is no, you already know what to do. You've felt it, you've frozen it, you've rebuilt, remembered, and released. Now, you protect it. You don't detach out of anger, you detach out of wisdom. Because when someone shows you the same story twice, don't wait for the sequel to change. You already know how it ends. If you want, I can now stitch all 6 into one full-length motivational piece, or format it for something like a video script, blog post, or audiobook style delivery. Just say the word. Absolutely. Here's a strong, grounded, emotionally charged conclusion that ties all 6 keynotes together and leaves your audience feeling empowered, clear, and unshakable. Conclusion: the power was never in holding on, it was in knowing when to let go, so now you know. Detaching doesn't mean you didn't love. Staying silent doesn't mean you didn't have something to say. And walking away doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. You stepped back, you stayed silent. You watched the truth reveal itself, not through promises, but through patterns. And when the moment came, you didn't chase, you didn't beg. You didn't explain. You just stood there solid, steady, unbothered while they came back confused, fumbling for the version of you they thought would still be waiting. But that version is gone. You're no longer in the business of proving your worth to people who are blind to it. You're no longer a prisoner to the past just because it once felt like home. You're no longer holding space for people who wouldn't hold your heart with care. You've felt the pain, you've studied the patterns, you've rebuilt, you've released, and now you stand in something stronger than revenge, louder than anger, peace. That's your power now. And the real ones will feel it. The wrong ones will fear it. And the ones who once underestimated it will come begging like fools. But you won't flinch, because your healing is no longer up for negotiation. You've already walked away. And this time, you're not looking back. Let me know if you want the full speech polished into one continuous piece or formatted for a podcast, stage talk, or dramatic reading. We can take it anywhere you want from here.